Let me tell you a story. For 15 years, let's say I was one of the top quantitative analysts at a place we'll call Sterling Cross Capital, a firm that saw itself as the apex predator of the Wall Street jungle. I wasn't just good at my job. I was the reason they were so profitable. And my reward for generating a truly sickening amount of money for them? I got targeted in a secret, internal experiment to have me replaced. The firm spent a small fortune on an informant to dig through my entire life, hunting for any skeleton, any mistake, any excuse to push me out without paying the severance I was owed. They found nothing. So they just invented a reason. The whole thing was a charade to make room for an insider, a well-connected, arrogant liability who couldn't tell a balance sheet from a dinner menu. They called it a seamless transition. They told me their systems were so perfect, so automated, that the person sitting in the chair was basically irrelevant. What they didn't know was that the clueless replacement they chose, this walking caricature of competence, was the one person whose specific brand of arrogant idiocy would accidentally trigger a digital time bomb. A time bomb I buried deep inside the company's core trading systems years ago. A bomb that wouldn't just cost them money, but would expose every dirty secret, every backroom deal, and every shred of corruption, causing a meltdown that would make headlines. They thought they were just replacing an employee. They were about to find out they'd just lit the fuse to their own destruction. If you're already feeling that little mix of outrage and anticipation, do me a favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. To really get how Sterling Cross imploded, you need to understand what it was and what I was to them. This wasn't one of the big household name banks. It was a leaner, meaner kind of place. The type of firm that lives in the shadows of the giants, making obscene amounts of money by being smarter, faster, and way more ruthless. The culture was brutal. It was a pressure cooker built to weed out weakness, and for 15 years, I thrived in it. I didn't come from money or have a network of family friends on the street. I got there on a scholarship and a single-minded obsession with numbers. I started as a junior analyst, running for coffee and triple-checking spreadsheets until my eyes burned. But I saw patterns where other people just saw noise. While the old guard was still making deals on gut feelings and handshakes, I was busy building the future. My mentor, the firm's founder, Arthur Sterling, was a relic from another era. He was a tough, old-school financier who wore the same style of suit for 40 years. But he was no fool. He saw which way the wind was blowing. He knew the future of finance wasn't about who you knew, but how fast your algorithms could think. He gave me a tiny budget, a corner of the office, and told me to build him a machine that printed money. So I did. Over the next decade, I built a series of more and more sophisticated automated trading systems. My work became the firm's secret weapon, its main profit engine. We specialized in high-frequency arbitrage, exploiting tiny, split-second price differences for the same asset across different global markets. It's a game of microseconds. My systems would execute thousands of trades a second, skimming fractions of a penny off each one. It doesn't sound like much, but when you do it billions of times a day, it adds up. And it added up to about 40% of the firm's annual profit. My masterpiece, the system that ran it all, was something I called the Oracle Protocol. It wasn't just some trading algorithm, it was a semi-sentient ecosystem. It watched everything: geopolitical news, weather patterns, social media chatter, central bank announcements, and used that data to predict market chaos and position us to profit from it. It was my baby. I wrote millions of lines of code, refining it, teaching it, making it smarter. It was complex, powerful, and ridiculously profitable. But it was also a double-edged sword, a system that, powerful in the wrong hands, could be a weapon of mass destruction. And I knew, even then, Wall Street is full of the wrong hands. Now, this is where my old bosses would probably love for you to think I was some disgruntled employee who planned this elaborate sabotage. The truth is way more damning for them. The weapon that brought them down wasn't sabotage. It was a safety feature. It was a promise I made to Arthur Sterling himself. Years ago, after a rogue trader at another firm blew $1 billion hole in their books, Arthur called me into his office. He was spooked. He asked me, "Sarah, could that happen here? Could one of your systems hide a massive loss or be used to cook the books?" I told him the honest truth. Yes. In the wrong hands, absolutely. He gave me a simple, direct order. Fix it. Build something into the Oracle protocol that protects the firm from its own people. I don't care what it costs. I need to know no single person can bring this house down out of greed or stupidity. So I built what I called the integrity freeze. It wasn't even a secret. I documented it. I explained it to the risk management committee. Of course, this was back when people actually read documentation. The integrity freeze was my version of a dead man's switch, designed to protect the firm, not to destroy it. Here's how it worked. The Oracle protocol was always running self-diagnostics, like a body checking its own vital signs. It knew its own logic better than anyone. It could tell the difference between a smart, aggressive trading strategy and a series of panicked, illogical manual overrides. It could spot the digital fingerprint of someone trying to brute force a profit, chase a bad bet, or, and this is the important part, hide a catastrophic loss by burying it under a mountain of nonsense trades. If the protocol detected this specific pattern of behavior, a pattern I'd codenamed Project Chimera because it was a monster stitched together from bad ideas, it would trigger a silent 24-hour countdown. During that countdown, the system would seem to function normally, but it would be waiting for a very specific fail-safe command that required my unique, biometrically secured credentials. It was the digital version of turning two keys at the same time. This was to stop the system from locking down over a simple glitch or an unusual but legitimate market event. It needed a human to confirm the chaos was unauthorized. If that 24-hour window passed without my override, the integrity freeze would execute. And this is the part they forgot. The freeze didn't just shut down trading. Too simple. It did exactly what Arthur asked. It protected the firm's integrity. It would immediately compile every single piece of data related to the desk that triggered the event. Every trade log, every keystroke, every internal chat, every email from every person involved, going back 5 years. It would pull the raw, unedited logs, the ones showing not just the final trades, but the canceled orders, the hidden losses, all the digital dirt firms pay millions to sanitize before regulators see it. Then, it would package this mountain of incriminating data, encrypt it, and automatically send it to two places: the firm's chief compliance officer and, as the ultimate backstop, the secure server of an independent auditing firm we had on retainer. That was the clause they never remembered. The system was designed to automatically report itself to a trusted third party. I built a safety net. I just never dreamed the firm's own leadership would be the ones to leap right into it. The beginning of the end arrived when Arthur Sterling finally retired. He sailed off to some private island, leaving the firm in the hands of his only son, Arthur Sterling Jr. Of course, nobody called him that. To all of us, he was just Junior. Junior was a walking, talking cliché of nepotism. He had a business degree from a school his dad had endowed a building to, a wardrobe that cost more than my first car, and a vocabulary made up entirely of empty buzzwords like synergy, disruption, and paradigm shift. He saw Sterling Cross not as the finely tuned machine it was, but as an old-fashioned relic he was destined to modernize. He didn't understand the business, he just loved the idea of being the one in charge. His first move? Bring in his own people. And his top priority was getting rid of me. In his eyes, I was a holdover from his dad's era. I was expensive, and worse, I was someone who understood the firm's plumbing better than he ever would. People like Junior don't like people like me. My competence was a direct threat to his authority. So, he introduced me to Chad. Chad was Junior's college buddy. Same haircut, same smug grin, same unearned confidence. His resume was a joke. A short stint at his dad's real estate firm was the only real-world experience he had. But he had an MBA and a handshake that could crush bone. Junior presented him as some transformational talent who was going to optimize our algorithmic assets. It was a total farce. The secret experiment was to prove that anyone could do my job. Junior and Chad truly believed the Oracle protocol was a magic box that just printed money. They thought my salary was an unnecessary cost. The person in the chair, they argued, was just a glorified button pusher. They couldn't fire me without cause. My contract was ironclad. So they started a quiet little witch hunt. They hired an outside consultant, an informant, really, to shadow me, interview my colleagues, and scour my records for any tiny misstep. They were desperate to find something, anything, that would let them terminate my contract and dodge the massive payout I was owed. They spent months and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They found nothing. So they just manufactured a crisis. They announced a major strategic restructuring. My role, they claimed, was being eliminated. It was a lie, and we all knew it. My role was being handed directly to Chad. That final meeting was surreal. It was in the big glass conference room overlooking the city. Junior sat at the head of the table, flanked by Chad and an HR rep who couldn't look me in the eye. Junior delivered the final blow with a smirk. "We appreciate your years of service, Sarah," he said, the words tasting like ash. "But the firm is moving in a more agile direction. We need new blood." I just stared at him. I didn't say a word. Chad, who couldn't resist, leaned forward. "Don't worry about the system," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I've read the manuals. It's pretty straightforward." As I was packing up my desk, putting 15 years of my life into a cardboard box, Junior walked by one last time. He couldn't help himself. He just had to have the last word. "You know, Sarah," he said, leaning against my office door frame, "for what we were paying you, we could have 2 Chads." He paused for effect. "I'm not worried about replacing you. The system is what matters, not the person running it." That was a Friday. They gave Chad my credentials, my office, my chair. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd saved a fortune. They had no idea the clock had just started ticking. Chad's reign as master of the universe lasted for exactly 1 business day. That Monday, he strode onto the trading floor like he'd just won the Super Bowl. He wanted to make his mark immediately, to prove to Junior he'd made the right call. He wasn't content to just let the Oracle protocol do its job. That was my method, passive, observant, surgical. Chad's method was loud, aggressive, and dumb. He had a hot tip from a buddy about some small, obscure currency in South America that was supposedly about to pop. The Oracle protocol had already analyzed it and flagged it as high-risk, low-reward noise, a classic sucker's bet. Chad saw his chance to be a hero. He went into the system and started manually overriding the protocol's logic. The first few trades he forced through immediately went south. It was a small loss, something the system would have automatically corrected for and absorbed in seconds. But Chad panicked. His ego couldn't take being wrong on his very first day. So he did what all amateurs do. He doubled down. He started fighting the machine. He disabled risk parameters. He forced more and more capital into his bad bet, trying to bully the market into proving him right. The system lit up with warnings, first yellow, then amber, then screaming red alerts across his monitors. He ignored them all, mashing keys like a kid playing a video game. He was creating a cascade of illogical, contradictory orders, digging a hole and then frantically digging it deeper. Without even knowing it, he had perfectly executed the exact sequence of panicked, idiotic moves that defined Project Chimera. At 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time, a silent alarm tripped deep in the server racks. The 24-hour countdown for the integrity freeze had begun. Chad, sweating and furious at the sea of red on his screens, had no clue. He just thought the market was being unfair. Tuesday morning, the real fun started. Chad came in, determined to fix his mess. But when he tried to log in, he was met with a single cryptic message on his screen. System integrity audit in progress. All manual overrides are locked. Trading was frozen, not just his terminal, the entire desk. Billions of dollars in automated strategies were dead in the water. He couldn't buy, he couldn't sell, he was locked out completely. He called IT. The tech guys I had trained for years were baffled. They saw the lockdown, but the code was a black box to them. My credentials were the only key, and I was gone. Panic started to ripple across the floor. Junior came down, his face pale. Every minute the system was down. The firm was hemorrhaging money, not from bad trades, but from the sheer absence of the thousands of profitable trades it should have been making. They spent the entire day in a frantic, useless scramble. They called in outside consultants. They rebooted servers. They yelled at Chad. Nothing worked. The system I had built was doing its job, protecting itself from the fools in charge. Wednesday afternoon at 3:16 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the trigger, the integrity freeze finished its work. In a fraction of a second, the system compiled everything. 5 years of data. Every shady trade Junior had ever tried to hide. Every compliance corner they'd cut. And front and center, a perfect second-by-second log of Chad's multi-million-dollar meltdown, complete with all the ignored warnings and disabled safety protocols. A pristine, undeniable digital confession. Then, it sent the package. One copy landed in the inbox of the firm's terrified chief compliance officer. The other landed on the secure server of the external auditor. The time bomb had detonated. Sterling Cross Capital's darkest secrets were no longer their own. My phone rang at 7 a.m. on Thursday. I was on my patio, drinking coffee for the first time in 15 years, without a knot of stress in my stomach. The caller ID said, Arthur Sterling Jr. I let it ring for a second, just to savor it, then picked up. The voice on the other end wasn't the smug master of the universe I'd last seen. It was the voice of a scared little boy who'd just broken his father's most expensive toy. Sarah? He stammered. Sarah, it's Junior. Listen, we have a situation. I just stayed silent. It's the system, he said, his voice cracking. It's frozen. There's some kind of audit lock. We can't get in. People are talking. The auditor's called. Sarah, we need you. He took a shaky breath. Listen, we made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Chad is gone. He's fired. Just name your price, Sarah. Any price. New contract, partner track, whatever you want. Please just come back and fix this. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The silence on his end of the line was deafening, filled only with the sound of his ragged breathing. There's nothing to fix, Junior, I said, my voice calm and even. The system isn't broken. It worked exactly as it was designed to. I could almost hear his brain short-circuiting. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the integrity freeze, I explained slowly, like I was talking to a child. A safety protocol I built for your father about a decade ago. It's a fail-safe to prevent the very thing Chad did, catastrophic failure from incompetence. It detects a pattern of panicked, illogical trading, and if it isn't overridden by a qualified analyst, it assumes the firm is under attack, either from the outside or, in this case, from within. Then it takes steps to protect the firm's integrity. He was speechless. It's not sabotage, Junior, I continued. It's just the enforcement of rules your father put in place. The system compiled a complete, uncensored record of the last 5 years of trading activity, including Chad's little adventure, and delivered it for regulatory review. The consequences are in motion, and they are completely, utterly, and beautifully irreversible. The aftermath was even more spectacular than I could have imagined. The auditors, legally obligated to act, forwarded the package to the SEC. The investigation was swift and brutal. The data the system collected was a perfect roadmap to a corporate culture that had rewarded cutting corners for years. The fines were astronomical, reaching nearly $1 billion when all was said and done. Sterling Cross Capital, once a predator, was crippled. It was forced to sell off its most profitable divisions just to stay afloat, a pale shadow of its former self. Junior and Chad were both permanently barred from the securities industry for life. They didn't just replace me, they erased themselves. And they did it with a system I built, a system that valued integrity far more than they ever did. They thought the person in the chair was irrelevant. It turns out, that's the only thing that matters. In the end, this isn't really a story about revenge. My revenge was passive. All I did was step aside and let their own incompetence do the rest. This is a story about value. Your true value isn't just in the work you do, but in the integrity you refuse to compromise. Arrogance has a price, nepotism has a price, and on Wall Street, that bill always comes due. If this story resonates with you, please share it with anyone who's ever been made to feel replaceable. Your expertise and your integrity matter more than you know. I'd love to hear your own stories of workplace justice in the comments below. I promise, I read every single one.